Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, madam.
Yeah, you're welcome to this afternoon session of the Students Engagement Seminar for CPA paper 2, that is quantitative techniques. Sorry for that delay, we had some issue with the network. So this afternoon we have QT, that is CPA paper 2, and our presenter is already on call, and that is CPA Dennis Tuyamureba. CPA Dennis is a head teacher and a certified public accountant who exhibits a high level of result-oriented and a transformational leader that targets total quality. And his slogan is getting it right first time or zero defect. He's a director and a lecturer at Pactus Uganda Limited in Mbarara. And he has done that since 2009 in papers of quantitative techniques, management decision and control, cost and management accounting, and financial management. He's a head teacher of Sacred Heart Mushanga from August 2015 up to date. He's the chairperson, CPA Network Western Region, a member of Economic Commission, Barak Diocese, and he has facilitated many workshops and CPDs in both education and accounting. So we believe this is the best person to tell us about QT. And hopefully after this, the next sitting in December, people will see a change. They will pass the paper. That is the change people want to see. The CPA Dennis, you're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me this chance. I think I can start straight away.
Yes, you can start.
You will allow me to share my screen. I want to welcome everybody in this webinar. And as you have already stated, I believe after this seminar, we shall see a change. And this engagement seminar, we are concerned about what the examiners expect and what the students should present. That has always been not matching. The examiners, what they expect is not exactly what the students present, and eventually the percentage pass becomes small and the students continue complaining and the examiners continue expecting better performance. Dear participants, allow me to go through the preamble. This is something that most people will know, but we shall always repeat it because it is what is required. In the first place, what you need to know before you start the QT as a course, quantitative techniques, is that it is possible to pass QT. That should be the beginning. Quite a number of people will scare students and those ones who want to start the paper that the paper is hard, but I would like to mention it now and hear it from me that the paper is possible. The next thing you need to know is the level and position of the paper in the syllabus. It is on the first level, which means what is acquired in that level is supposed to be used in other levels apart from using them in real life. You need to know the main aim. You need to know the level of assessment. You need to know the learning outcomes. That is what most students miss on. They never read the syllabus to know what is expected of them. Then the commitment required in terms of time and resources. Very many students will think that in 1 week towards the exam, they will sit down and revise and pass. And when they don't pass, they fail to understand that they gave the paper very little time. Then the level of knowledge and skills that is required, the examination structure, and the positive attitude and believing in yourself. You are supposed to make sure that those ones are right before you begin, my dear friends. This paper has a relationship with a number of papers in the structure of the syllabus. Quantitative techniques has a great influence on the following papers. Dear participants, cost and management accounting, which is paper 7, has a relationship with QT. Financial management paper. In a financial management paper, one of the key issues that are captured there is financial decisions. You are basically looking at financial decisions, and everything that involves a decision requires quality information in terms of qualitative and quantitative. And therefore, you cannot manage paper 10 unless you have skills and well understood at QT level. Management decision and control, paper 11, particularly will combine cost and management accounting and quantitative techniques. The only difference is that now this paper is on level 2. As we shall see levels of management, this is tactical management. And therefore, the decisions, the answering techniques of MDC will be slightly different from those ones of QT, but the knowledge and skills required and the competencies are similar. Advanced financial management paper 16 is an advanced level of financial management, this time at the strategic level, and therefore it requires the quantitative techniques skills. I must tell you that you cannot lie yourself that you are going to deal with any, complete this course without application of skills grounded in the quantitative techniques paper. I have been mentioning where the paper belongs. All the papers of CPA have a relationship with the management levels that we know. The competence skills that are required at the lower level, they deal with operational management. And then when you go to level 2, where you will find MDC that I talked about, you need technical skills because you are a technical manager, a mid-role manager, and taking any decision will require that you use the competencies or the skills that are acquired at level 1. And those at the next level, you are more advanced, but you understand how those skills or those calculations and the data that you use is worked out. The strategic level is related to the professional skills. Like I have told you in the relationship before, it means when you go to advanced financial management, you will still be applying quantitative technique skills, only that at this time you are at professional level. Even if data is provided to you, you can interpret it and apply it accordingly. Dear participants, allow me to take you to the aim, the main aim as to why this paper exists. Those people who did CPA before 2008, they understand that that paper was not there. This paper was introduced in 2008, and the main aim was to develop an understanding of the mathematical principles and concepts which are useful in the problem solving and decision making. I believe that everybody who starts this course should not open any book, should not interact with any lecturer unless you understand the outcomes that are expected by the examiners. Number one, to demonstrate an understanding of statistical methods used in decision making. Number two, to demonstrate an understanding and application of statistical and mathematical models for estimation and forecasting. And the third one is demonstrate an understanding and application of techniques used in solving optimization problems in management. The examination structure, there will be a 3-hour examination comprising of 6 questions of 20 marks, each of which a candidate will be required to attempt any 5. You have a choice to drop one hard question and you continue to get your 100%. When I analyzed the reports from the examiners and from my experience as a person who has been handling QT, I discovered the following that I would like to share with you so that we can lay a strategy to perform much better than we have been performing. Analysis of the examiner's reports of several sittings revealed the following. Number 1, pass rate has been oscillating between 18% to 45%. And for September sitting, the previous one, it was 34.3%. That automatically means that over 65% of the people who sat the paper did not score 50%. And yet to score 50, it means you have failed the way you have passed. 50% means that you are allowed to fail by 50. But you are expected to perform much better than that, given what I have talked about above, that you have more knowledge in QT, so that when you go to MDC and those other papers, you can perform even much better. A big percentage of the students attempt particular questions, say 90% will attempt. Go to the reports, you will find the examiner saying 90%. This question was popular. But what else do they add? They add that the 90% are attempted, but they show you that although it was popular, only 20% could score like 10 marks. And yet the question is supposed to take 20 marks. Majority of candidates do not have full understanding of basic concepts. They have scanty knowledge on key topics like probability and probability distributions. When we talk about probability distributions, we mean the normal distribution, the binomial, the Poisson distribution, the t-distribution, the chi-square, and many others. Linear programming, network analysis. Excuse me. Formulating mathematical models, you identified it in the learning outcomes that you have to formulate mathematical models that will help you solve problems, especially the optimization problems. Graphical representation is a challenge to many students, and many of them cannot even manage to get a scale to draw the graph, especially when the figures are big. Explaining key terms in quantitative techniques. I have always explained to students that it is not possible to enter an exam of QT and you meet only numbers. Many of the people who claim that the subject is hard, they think that it is going to be calculation from A to Z. And only to reach the first question says define, explain, distinguish. And they can't answer it. So every student that is going to doing this paper is supposed to take the trouble to go and analyze the paper and find out how many marks belong to the calculations. And even the calculations that you do, sometimes you are asked to explain them, to interpret, meaning that you must understand the concepts very well. Candidates do not use the 15-minute seat to read questions and make right choices, leading to misinterpretation of questions. Do not make use of they do not make use of the list of formulae provided, and eventually they end up making very, very small mistakes that affect the whole thing, and you cannot pass the question. The candidates have challenges of using scientific calculators and statistical tables. It is important that the calculator that you use for practice, use it and know how to use the calculator. Some calculators will need to shift in order to use a certain function. Some calculators can be set in scientific notation, and if it goes there and you don't know how to remove it, means in an exam you will not manage. The statistical tables, when you are reading them, they have the heading. Some of them are cumulative, others may be individual. In particular, for the normal distribution tables, where you read it should be cumulative normal distribution tables. But you find candidates reading normal distribution individual terms, and that means the answers you are getting, all of them are wrong. I am requesting kindly that once you are a student and you reach such a topic like chi-square, like t-distribution, like normal distribution, make sure that you are in the tables and you know how to read the tables very well. There are challenges of using a graph paper. Every graph paper can contain any figure, irrespective of how big it can be. It is about scale. And if you don't know how to use scale, please contact your lecturer, contact a friend, and know how to determine scale. It is easy to determine. And when you are plotting the graph, make sure that you have a sharp pencil. You have something that is not going to have double lines, that is not too thick. Some students use alternative methods not specified in the questions, because they go to the question, to the paper, when they have already chosen what to do. You are going to deal with a number that requires that you are going to use graphical method. And when you reach there, you will remember that you don't know how to deal with a graph, and you start using like simplex method, for example, in linear programming. You have to be careful. If this question states hence or otherwise, then you can use any other method. But if the question is saying hence, it means what you have already used above is what you have to continue with. Some students have challenges of numbering, doing number 4 as the first question, and you indicate it as number 1. When you have those challenges, it means you are going, the answers may be right, but as long as they are put on a wrong question, they will not be right. Failing to give basic standard definitions. How to overcome these challenges? One of the strategies is through effective revision. We learn how to define, how to explain, how to draw, how to compute. Whatever is required, we have to do practice. There is no shortcut, my dear friends. There are basic concepts that you have to understand, how to define them, how to explain, how to determine, how to calculate, how to interpret. Make sure before you enter the examination, you know how to define, explain, describe with examples the following. You have to know what a parameter is and what a statistic is. And you can be able to give examples so that even if you fumble around trying to define and you can't make it, but the examiner discovers that from the example, you exactly know what it is. And particularly for parameter and statistics, we are normally dealing with statistics, and the statistics are dealing with the samples. The parameters are dealing with the whole population. So if you can't understand the relationship between a statistic and a parameter, you cannot take a decision very well, because most of the times we don't deal with the whole, we deal with the sample and predict from the sample what takes place in the population. When I talk about population, I mean the totality of all observable items or in an experiment. But you can use a sample to predict. You have to know what is a dependent and independent variable. That one is independent, not independence. A dependent and independent variable. And always know that independent variables are plotted on the horizontal axis if we are drawing a graph. You have to know what is a quantitative variable and a qualitative variable. You have to know what is independent and mutually exclusive event. You have to know what we mean by collection of data, tabulation of data, classification of data, and why we do it. You have to know the difference between primary data, secondary data, published and unpublished data, so that when you are interpreting data, when you are talking about the decision, you know what you mean. Type 1 and type 2 errors. These are very key, especially when you are testing hypothesis, in those hypothesis concepts, we talk about type 1 and type 2 errors. And it is not right for any student who does this course to complete without knowing the difference between type 1 and type 2 errors. Because sometimes we say something is right when actually it is wrong. Or we say something is wrong when actually it is right. So you have to know type 1 and type 2 errors. Methods of collecting data are key. Interviews, observations, questionnaires, sampling methods, quarter sampling, cluster sampling, stratified sampling, quad sampling, etc. And in all those sampling methods, you have to know which ones are probability sampling methods and which one are non-probability sampling methods. If you cannot distinguish between the two, then that means you cannot be able to apply them. Remember, these definitions that I'm talking about are related to the calculations that you always make. Features of a good estimator. The whole life of business is about estimating and forecasting. So you must know what is a good estimator. You deal with both point estimation and interval estimation. So it is important that you know the characteristics, because the interpretation that you will deal with even at the MDC level and even in other advanced financial management papers, you will discover that you are dealing with estimation and you need to know what is a good estimator. Then you deal with the point and interval estimation. You have to know shadow or dual price in linear programming. You have to know what is a slack variable. You have to know the difference between population and a sample. You have to know the difference between probability and probability distributions. You can calculate probability, but probability distributions are like formulae that generate probabilities. And therefore, you should know how they work, what are their parameters, and how are they used. You need to know the prior and the posterior probability, especially when it comes to Bayes' theorem. Dear participants, all of us have to understand the measures of central tendency, the mean, mode, median, geometric mean, harmonic mean, all those ones we have to know them, both in terms of calculation and in terms of interpretation and even definition. Variation and deviation are key, because once you have measures of central tendency, you have to know the scatteredness of the items that you are talking about, and so that you can conclude that they are varied. And therefore, variation and deviation are key. Dispersion and skewness, you have to know the differences. You have to know where they are applied. You have to define them. You have to explain, and you have to interpret data in terms of that. Coefficients of variation, regression and correlation, quartiles, percentiles, and deciles. You have to make sure that you know those concepts. You can explain them even if you are met on the street and somebody asks you what is a percentile. Null and alternative hypotheses, permutation and combinations, those are very key. You have to understand them, because the arrangements and combinations, they help us in determining some probabilities. In determining the number of arrangements, it can help you to know the number of items you are going to deal with. For example, you are making number plates of vehicles. Descriptive statistics and inferential statistics, binding and redundant constraints in linear programming, you have to understand them, and you can be able to identify, you can be able to explain. Skewness and kurtosis, correlation coefficients and their interpretation. Properties and parameters of different distributions and how to read their respective tables. I mentioned it earlier. One of the challenges students get is reading the tables. And if you get a wrong value from the table, if that number has a relationship with another question, it means you can fail from part 1 up to the last one. Calculations in descriptive statistics and their graphs, differentiation, index numbers, regression, testing hypothesis, confidence intervals, binomial, normal, and Poisson distribution, and other distributions, linear programming, decision trees, probability. We have decision trees, but we can also have probability trees, especially when we are dealing with compound events. So you should not stop at drawing decision trees, but you can also deal with probability trees. Although there are other methods that can be used, like the contingent tables and other formulae to determine the probabilities. Network analysis, skewness, all those ones you really have to make sure that you understand them. Dear participants, I want to request that we now you must have a high level of competencies in all the three, as long as you are a student of quantitative techniques, my dear friends. Make sure those three areas in red, you have substantial knowledge, competencies, and skills on them before you enter the paper. Statistical methods, skills of handling descriptive statistics are required. Mathematical models, curricular skills required to create mathematical representations of real life scenario to make a prediction. When I'm talking about that, excuse me, my dear friends, I want you to understand that why some people have not been getting the marks in an exam of QT, they concentrate and they know I can find the mean, mode, median. They can find the dispersion. They can draw a histogram. But they forget that all the knowledge they have is about statistical methods. If all your knowledge, even if you are getting 100% on it, is on statistical methods, you will fail the paper, because the paper will have to be balanced to include the statistical methods and the mathematical models and solving optimization problems. So you must have some curricular skills, and those skills that create mathematical models, it means that you will have word problems which you change into equations that can be solved and interpreted to predict what is likely to happen. I am requesting kindly that if you are a student of QT, you must know how to solve problems as far as the equations are concerned. Some people even go to statistical methods and think they have to pass that one because there is multiplication, addition, and subtraction. But you will find challenges in questions that have been set. The question is about index numbers, but somewhere something is hidden by the examiner, and the examiner wants to see your use of mathematical skills. And when you try to interpret the question, it ends up into simultaneous equations, or it ends up into a linear equation or a quadratic equation. And you have to apply skills of calculus to determine that unknown. And therefore, it is important that as a student of QT, the three areas are balanced. Some people will say, I will not attempt those numbers, I will do my statistics and come out. But understand that the paper will be balanced. Do statistical methods only, you are just doing a third of the paper. Solving optimization problems. You must make sure that you enter the paper when you are able to solve an optimization problem. And when I talk about optimization problems, they involve the linear programming, they involve the application of differentiation so that you can determine when they can maximize profit. And in those problems, unfortunately, some of them can be formed by the examiner, or you may be required to formulate and solve. And therefore, the skills in mathematical models are really key. Number one for all papers from June 2008 to date has always been about statistical methods. Mastering only statistical methods means that you can only attempt number one. In addition, one question can cover a range of topics, each appearing as part of the question. That is the format of QT. QT is such a broad course that to make sure that every area is touched, You find one question having statistics, having some mathematical models, and even solving optimization problems. Dear friends, I am requesting you that you balance as you revise, as you study. I want to request the participants and those ones who are going to sit this paper, those ones who are revising, those ones who are practicing, know that you will do a competence and skills exam that requires a lot of critical thinking, comprehension, ability to apply knowledge. This exam is a skills exam. It is not for memory and recording. Sometimes people go to the exam expecting that they are going to solve, for example, a problem. I know how to differentiate. And you know, the condition I'm going to use is marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. And therefore, the first derivative of the revenue function and the cost function will help me. But you reach an exam, you find they have given you quantity, they have given you a demand equation. And therefore, you determine the revenue function yourself. And that requires you to know that to get revenue, you must get quantity times price. And therefore, demand function times quantity will give you a revenue function as long as what is there is unknown. So that before you differentiate, you have to create what you are going to differentiate. And therefore, you must have deep understanding of the concepts. Start with a lot of commitment. Commit resources, pay the tuition, the ICPAU dues, buy books, kits, attend seminars like this one, join discussion groups, start revision from day one and be consistent on it. Every time you complete the chapter, look for the questions related to that in the past papers. Don't start saying that we have just started on one page. Check whether there is a definition that you can find in the papers, and you answer that. You have to read books cover to cover. Many people of recent don't like reading. They can listen, they can watch the TV. But in case you don't have a computer to go into the things that are audio, excuse me, you have to really read. Some people, when they read something once, they imagine they have read. I am giving a testimony for me during my time when I was studying these courses. I would read the book from cover to cover, go to the chapter like 10 times. Why? Because every time I would attempt questions, if I find something that I have not understood, I go back to the chapter to at least read some captions to understand what it means. Read and understand, do not cram. That is rote learning. My dear friends, in my presentation somewhere, I will show you something on linear programming, but you will find that students read and cram. They know when you are dealing with linear programming, you are either in maximization or minimization. And they are thinking that you are maximizing profit or minimizing profit or contribution. But you can go to a question and it is demanding something else. As long as it is dealing with scarce resources and their limitations, you can apply linear programming, but it doesn't have to be profit. To understand, always identify the questions that you need to answer after reading a concept. Some people want to go and read it, and when they finish it, they say, I have read this chapter. Before you even start reading, can you identify which questions you need to answer? So after reading that topic, after studying it, try to answer and see if you have understood or you still have gaps. I have always given assignments when I'm teaching my students. And when you give an assignment, the feedback you get when you go next round, they say the number was hard. How many people attempted? You do it for us. We could not even interpret it. You have to try by all means. You would rather fail the number, but make sure you attempt. Follow the theory of involvement, which says that when you hear, you forget. When you see, you remember. When you do, you understand. There is nothing that can challenge practice hands-on. You therefore must use pen and paper. Attempt to answer, please. Do not sit there and you say, you tell somebody in the group, attempt for us this number, attempt for us this one also, you must use your hand and your pen and paper, and you also attempt. In the examiner's comments, for almost all the sittings, failure to exhibit full understanding of the concepts by majority of the students is the most frequent issue. And why do they fail to understand the concepts? Because they are always looking for what was solved. How was it solved? They follow somebody's methods. They have not attempted to see if they can solve it that way. And you will find that everybody is looking for, you have given a test, people don't want to understand, but they're asking what are the solutions of that test? We want to look at them. Please make sure that you get involved. Know what is expected from action words like calculate, evaluate, prepare, determine, explain, compute, identify, interpret, distinguish, define, give. Those words are action words. They tell you what to do. If they say evaluate, you know what an evaluation is. If they say compute, you know you are calculating and delivering the answer. I would like to request students to follow a logical flow strategy. Participants that are listening to me, I want you to evaluate yourself. If somebody met you and asked you, which chapter have you covered? Which chapter have you read? Would you be able to tell the person the narration from where the chapter begins to up to where it ends, the concepts involved? So that if you know, if this one is at this, it is at this level. For every topic, master the flow of concepts. If you asked me, you are going to deal with probability. What is involved in probability? Can I be able to define an event? Can I be able to define a possibility space or sample space? How is the sample space related to an event? And you continue flowing, and you know, we have conditional probability, we go to Bayes' theorem, we can use a probability tree, we can do this one. Are you able to do that? Some people will understand just the middle part of the topic, and they can't know where they begin from. They don't know the definition. They don't know where they end. Sometimes even when the question is picked, they don't know whether this is talking about the introduction, whether it is the middle part of the chapter. And that's what I'm asking. Always every chapter, know the flow of the concepts. And that's how you will know that you don't know this, but you know that. Sometimes people in an exam choose a hard question when they don't know it is hard, because they don't know that these are concepts in this area, and this is a harder concept. This is an easier concept. When you look at the logical flow of strategy of the topics, you will know that this is a topic that I'm handling, but I need some prerequisite knowledge to handle these problems. For example, I gave an example of dealing with linear programming. Be able to define what is linear programming, understand the major processes that involve formulating the problem, solving by either graphical method or simplex method, and interpretation of results. Be able to talk about the limitations. When I am talking about these three, I will first of all understand that if I am in that linear programming like I have talked about, formulating the problem involves what? It involves defining variables. And that is the beginning of solving the problem. My dear participants, one of the challenges that I have faced and has been identified is some people fail to define the variables in order to solve, for example, an LP problem. Stating the objective function. You cannot state the objective function unless you have defined the variables. That's what I mean about the flow. When they say state the objective function, you must first define the variables. After defining the variables, you state the objective function, then you derive the constraints, including non-negativity constraints. I am talking about formulation of the problem. And then you proceed with the rest of the steps that you know. If you want to solve by graphical method, you know how you deal with it graphically. If you want to use simplex method, you know how you proceed. But what you need to note if you get a challenge in defining variables, you can get a clue from the question, as in the question below, part 3. I have put an example of a question. Some people, if they know that they have to define the variables, but they try to define the variables, they cannot define them. And once you don't define the variables, it means you cannot do anything. But again, they also fail to cast their eye in the question, to look at the parts in the question, what is the examiner asking for? Because basically, the variables that you define will be delivered as part of the answers. And therefore, I have picked question 5, part B, June 2008. And I want to read through the question and show you how I would identify the variables to be defined in the question. The question says, a bicycle factory is to be built. There are 2 types of assembly lines, which can be used for assembling the bicycle. Assembly line of type A can produce 5 bicycles per day. It occupies 500 meters squared of the floor space and needs 9 skilled workmen to operate. Assembly line of type B can produce 3 bicycles per day. It occupies 600 meters squared of floor space and needs only 4 skilled men to operate. In the factory, there is 6,000 meters squared of floor space available for assembly lines. Only 72 skilled workmen are available, required. Write that one should be maximization problem, which needed 1 mark. Determine all the constraints. Then use the graphical method to determine how many of each type of lines the factory manager should install. I want to go back. The first question is write the maximization problem. Particularly here, you can't write the maximization problem. The logical flow of the things is that you have to first define variables, state the objective function, subject to constraints in order to have the proper linear programming format of the statement of the problem. But very many students, like I told you, are used to looking for profit, looking for contribution. In this particular problem, we want to maximize production when you look at it, because they want the number of assembly lines to be installed so that they can have the maximum number of bicycles produced. And therefore, when you are going to choose what becomes the variable, when I talk about variable, I mean that you want to say X, O, and Y, or you can use and Z, or X1, X2. When you look at this question, anybody who had failed to determine what should be the definition of the variable, part 3 of the question says use the graphical method to determine how many of each type of lines, which means the assembly lines will be the ones to become the variables. Meaning that if you say X1 is the number of assembly lines of type A, X2 will become a number of assembly lines of type B. Or you can say X is number of assembly lines of type A and Y is number of assembly lines of type B. The first part of the question is talking about maximization, but before you go to that problem, you have to first define. And therefore, if you can see what is asked in part 3, you will know that you cannot say X is equal to number of bicycles like many students would do when I would give them this question. They will say X is equal to number of bicycles, Y is equal to we are talking about what you are going to solve by graphical method, and therefore it can give you a clue on what to do. Dear students, I want to ask you to understand the concepts that has been the challenge. And why do you need to understand? An accountant is a business doctor. He, she diagnoses, interprets the conditions, the challenges of business, prescribes the solutions by giving advice on how to grow or overcome challenges and even monitors the progress thereafter. Therefore, better understanding of concepts is not for passing of exams only, but also to be able to give proper and quality advice to businesses when you are in the field. Exams are actually not hard. The experience in the field is harder. You may repeat a paper when you fail it, but you cannot have the chance if you fail to deliver at your workplace. So how do I get to understand properly is what I want my dear participants to know. One, read widely. Carry out effective revision. When I say read widely, carry out effective revision, some people want to look at the lecturer as the only source. They want to look at the CPA book as the only source. Please use other more books, use other sources of information and discover. If you are revising and you find something that you don't know, do not first think about the lecturer as the only source. Go to Google and check what they give, and you can make your own notes. Do research and listen carefully to pieces of advice from your lecturers. Read examiners' comments of previous sittings. Make sure every time the paper comes out or there are previous papers, if you really want to pass, get a paper, attempt it, the whole of it, if you can, and give your lecturer maybe to mark you. And then you go and look at the comments of the examiners for that particular sitting, whether that the questions you attempted were popular and what were the challenges on those questions. However, don't wait to acquire knowledge and skills from your lecturers only. Search for it from all relevant sources. You don't study lecturers, you study CPA. If you are listening to me, understand that you study CPA. When you fail to pass, sometimes you want to say the lecturer did not do his best. Maybe I shift from this training center, I go to another one. You get a lot of handouts from the whole world, and then you have overload of information and you are not doing any step forward. What is important is that you read. I have this strategy for revision. Start revision on day one. Nobody begins CPA as a baby class child without previous studies. Assume that lecturers will give you 25% and you have to provide 75%. I have had challenges, my dear friends. I teach UT, and sometimes some people are exempted. You go to MDC and you say, when we are dealing with this one, you are talking about decision trees. Somebody says, I don't know that one. But these decision trees are taught in universities. They are in textbooks. I am requesting kindly, from day one, start revision. Get the question papers, look at what you can manage yourself, and you start. Identify topics related to each learning outcome, and keep measuring your level of achievement based on the required outcomes. Dear friends, I want to request you to keep remembering, at least if you forget anything from this seminar, remember that you will be examined on statistical methods, mathematical modeling, and optimization problems. Get every paper that you come across, classify the questions. Are these optimization problems? Are these about mathematical modeling? Are these about statistical methods? How many are they out of the paper? How many can I attempt? Am I strong in only statistical methods, or I can also formulate problems and solve them? So identify the topics related to each learning outcome. Don't sit there and you say, I can do anything coming from measures of central tendency. You are just in one area, you can only pass one question or two. To deepen your understanding, begin by attempting questions on a particular concept for at least the last 10 years. For instance, numbers on statistical methods. I have faced a challenge. I have looked at what the examiners talk about, but many people do not want to practice. They want to die once, to reach in an examination and face the question for the first time and begin. Kindly, if you are a student of QT, make sure you do enough practice. And therefore, you need to download and bind the questions from 2008 to date. When you look at the questions in that, in those sets of questions, I wish I had time, I would show you the relationship of a number appearing in this paper, how it has been transformed to come in another paper, but asking about the same concept. And then students in that year, they said this is very, very hard, as if it has never been seen. The concept remains the same, but the questioning technique can be different. Analyze past papers and determine frequency of occurrence of topics and the common action words, e.g. calculate, describe, explain, distinguish. Be aware of what is expected of you in each case. If they say define, don't write as if you are explaining. If they say explain, don't write just a definition. If they say describe, make sure what you have given is a description. And then the examiner reading it will actually understand. And when you are describing, when you are doing anything, assume the examiner does not know anything about that concept. And you are the one who is helping this person to explain. And therefore, if you explain, the examiner now knows the concept is actually this. Determine your power times of concentration. Is it early morning, at night, or in the evening? And allocate harder concepts to that time. This calls for identifying your strengths and weaknesses in each topic. My dear friends, I want to tell you one of the things that I have. My dear friends, I want to tell you one of the things that I have met in this practice. There are particular topics where the students will say the topics are hard. And I want to tell you today that there is no hard topic and no simple topic in QT. I have had students who did mathematics at A level, and they go to attempt a simple number that is in statistics and it can't work out. And then they wonder. What is a challenge is that some topics need more time and others need less time. Some topics need more of a sober head and others can be handled at any condition. I will give an example. The simplest method of linear programming, when you talk about it, students say, that is difficult. But this is a step-by-step method. What you do it at another step. You're actually doing the same thing and repeatedly. So that means if you do it several times, it becomes a walkover. Very quickly, you will see yourself at the end. In addition to that, because of dealing with such a question many times, you will find that it is easy to identify which row to use, which one to go with, what should I not change. But if you are going to do it once in an exam, then you will have a challenge. Reason is that some people, when they are looking at that number, when you go to the first table, you have finished it. You say, now we repeat the process because we have not reached the end. They say, we are going to go this one again. I want you to remember that you cannot be lazy and you want to become a CPA. You have to really put in energy, be resilient, and have patience. If something doesn't come out, you can repeat even the whole process. No problem. There are key topics that need really hands-on and practice. Something that involves the differentiation. You know what it means. There are so many. There are so many concepts that can be differentiated. And when we are differentiating, we are looking at different terms, different arrangement, multiplication, division, and all those related optimization problems. You need to practice, practice, and practice. The reason I'm saying that is that some people will be used that you differentiate and equate to 0, depending on what we want to optimize. In one of the papers of QT, they wanted to get the value that minimizes the marginal cost. And they gave the cost. So which means you have to differentiate the cost to get the marginal cost and then differentiate the marginal cost to get the derivative, which you can equate to 0. But others would just equate to 0 immediately to minimize the cost instead of minimizing marginal cost. If you have not practiced a lot, you will just jump on the question and you try to solve and it can't come out. Formulating and measures of central tendency, dispersion and the coefficients, probability and probability distributions, regression and correlation. You have to do a lot of practice. Because eventually you will not need to read the list of formulae. You will use the formula many times and it goes to the long-term memory. And every time you meet the question, you just start. Index numbers. When I was reading the comments of the last sitting, the Lespears method that was asked, very many students attempted the number and quite a good number passed. But the index numbers that we are talking about, you are required to understand how the formula works, so that if there is an unknown that is in the question, you are able to apply the formula even when there is unknown. And then you can work out and determine what is not known. Basic equations. Dear participants, if you are a true student, solving basic equations is a must. You must be able to formulate and solve linear equations, meaning that the highest power is 1 of the unknown, simultaneous equations, and for them to be solved, the number of equations must be equal to the number of unknowns. If you discover a situation where there are two, you have already put 2 unknowns in the equation, then that means you must get another equation with the same unknowns. If there are 3 unknowns, you must have 3 equations. Otherwise, they can't be solved. Linear programming. Linear programming is key, my dear friends. It is not going to miss even in MDC. You must be able to formulate the problem. And in formulating, you have to define variables, to state the objective function, to make sure that you can write the constraints properly, including the non-negativity constraints. Solving, you can apply the graphical method, you can go simplex, and then interpretation. In interpretation of linear programming concepts, you must know what is the value of the objective function, whether it is minimization or maximization. You must know how to determine the shadow prices. You must know the binding constraints. You must know the slack variables and what has remained. And you should be able to interpret the table even if they do not put the headings, so that you know when something like this appears like here, if there is a variable in the basic variables, and the other side, there must be 1 in that row and the rest are zeros. And if you find that they are not like that, then you know there is a challenge. You must know how to interpret it. Remember, when you deal with these mathematical models, at a higher level, when you are employed, they will be handled by the computer. But when the computer delivers a solution, you should be able to interpret it. Drawing graphs of frequency distributions, especially histograms with unequal class intervals, where you are required to get the frequency density. You cannot attempt a question, and it is by practice that you will learn that you first know that when it is a frequency distribution, it is an inclusive kind of grouping or exclusive kind of grouping. I need to subtract 0.5 or add it, or I don't need it. The class intervals are uniform or they are not uniform. And then you think about how to begin. Most people will think that frequency distributions are easy. But what do examiners say? When people attempt them, they make serious errors and they end up getting no marks. The Z charts, you must know that you will have the 3 graphs and they must come out in a shape of a Z. And where one starts, where one ends is where another one starts, or where one ends, another one ends there also. You have to look for, when you formulate your table, to make sure that the values I have in the table coincide. They coincide here and there, and therefore there will be a joint. Moving averages, constraints of linear programming problems, network analysis. Then make timetable after knowing that those ones require a lot of practice. And when I say a lot of practice, it does not mean that you wait until you study that chapter that you are going to begin. You are not studying a lecturer. Just get the syllabus and look at those topics. Some of those topics you can get a textbook and work out and consult friends and be able to move forward. And then you attempt the questions. Then make a timetable for revision and stick to it. No procrastination, please. Very many students will start the course, but after a short time, they start putting in some other programs. I'm going to become a maid. I'm going to become a best man. When you have started this course, you have to learn to apply what we call opportunity cost in economics. What does that one mean? That there are things that you will put at bay until you complete the course. That's why it is important even to pay early, and anybody who comes to you say, I am already committed with exams. Try to time yourself as you answer questions, especially when you are close to the examination. Give yourself a mock, attempt the paper, time yourself, see whether you can complete the paper in the required time. Remember, the exam is for 3 hours. The 15 minutes are for reading the paper. That makes 180 minutes for you to do the question and finish. And you score 100 marks. And that means when you get 180 divided by 100, it makes 1.8 minutes per mark. And therefore 36 minutes per a 20-mark question. To read the question, attempt and deliver the answer. Always look at mark allocation as you answer, which will help you to determine the length of your answer. Somebody will look at a question which is 1 mark and is still there over-calculating, when actually the next one does not require that you use the knowledge from the previous one. Also, time yourself on how long it takes you to read a comprehensive scenario. There are some questions which have a lot of words and you have to read them. And some people may be slow readers. You have to time yourself, how long does it take me? At least have a question where you can practice and say, are 36 minutes enough for me? Some people don't fail because they don't have knowledge, but they go with knowledge in the exam and come back with it. And you find them outside the exam, they say, I didn't finish. And this number, you should have passed it. But why are you lamenting outside? Do practice now and know that you can finish. Consult your lecturer for corrections or approval of your approach and answers. Have an effective discussion group in which every member has to be allowed to discuss something. Dear students and the participants in this seminar, there are quite a number of people who will always be there as spectators when the numbers are being discussed. They don't even raise their voice to give a definition. And they have particular people they ask, come and discuss for us. And those are the 34.3% that pass. And the rest of the spectators may be the 65%. Make sure that you are part of the discussion. You would rather fail and they guide you. You would rather try and they say your approach is wrong. At least you will know that it is wrong. But make sure you participate. Don't be there to be discussed for. Know your learning style to help you choose the best approach for revision. There are basically 4 learning styles. You can know where you belong. Some people seek to understand principles before applying them in practice. Those ones are called the theorists. They have to first read the whole textbook, they reread, and then they can start revision. The reflectors, they seek to observe phenomena, think about them, and then choose to act. Those ones can look at the questions and then read as they answer the questions. Similarly, the activists, they prefer to deal with practical and active problems. Those ones, they don't have much patience with theory. So they cannot, their attention span is very short. Reading 3-4 pages, they can do it when they are looking for an answer of what has been difficult for them. And if you are that kind of person and you are not patient with theory, it means always have the questions before you begin. Read the questions, try to attempt, and they disturb your mind. When you go to read, that's when you will understand the things. Pragmatists, they prefer to study only if a direct link to practical problems can be seen, not interested in theory for its own sake. Similarly, these ones will have to act, and they are more active when they hear the timetable is up. They become very serious when they hear that the exam is next week. But you have to create that situation that puts you in a situation of thinking that there is something to do. And that's why I say you look for the question papers and you set your targets that you are going to complete them in a certain period. Attend revision classes and take note of salient issues and even question approaches. There are some people who will come like for this webinar and they don't have even where to write. They will even think that everything that has been presented on the screen is enough. But when you are very serious, you will have your notebook. And maybe there is something I have mentioned, but it's not written. But it is the one that catches your attention. And it is one that you want to fix after here. Please make sure that you do that. Use various resource past papers and revision kits for both CPA and even other rated accounting bodies like ACCA, without forgetting, of course, the internet. Read the ICPAU examination reports to know the pass rate and the challenges and weaknesses of the previous students and avoid them. When you read those things, when you are going to read, you become very serious. You will know the examiner said that this number was very popular, but 90% attempted the number. Only 10% passed it to 10 mark level. Then you will know what is it that made these people fail, and you avoid it. Of course, you have to drink a lot of water. The brain will be overworked when you are revising. And when I talk about revision, I mean revision. I mean revision. I don't mean people who go and read one question and then they say, we have revised it. We have done one question. This paper is broad. It is a skills exam. It requires a lot of revision. So your timetable for revision should be very serious and with targets. You have to say, we are now going to deal with a probability. And you identify the numbers of probability from 2008 to date. And you say we shall discuss these numbers by the end of 2 days. You may have that target for the group, but you must have a target for yourself. My simple request is, if you are a student and you want to pass, and you know you want to own marks, even after discussion in a group, go and close the book and attempt the number yourself. Try to check whether you can have the answer that was got, but at least do it yourself. I want to tell you, dear participants, what to do one day to the exam. Time will keep closing in, and you will find you are one day to the exam. Prepare all resources required: pens, rulers, calculators. Use the calculator that you are used to, like I told you. Don't just start borrowing and you don't know how to use its functions. Have your permission docket, examination docket, have your identity card, have everything sorted. Please do not sort those things and you can't find them on the day of the exam and you are getting late and you get nervous and you panic and you affect your brain. Let the things be sorted the day before. Go through your summaries to understand key concepts. For the QT students, I really don't expect somebody to be calculating much on the day before the exam. My request is that before the exam, the day before, you have summaries, you are in definitions, you are in explanations, you are in key concepts, you are in arrangements to make sure that what you are going to do the following day will not be a challenge. Some people want to have sleepless night calculating, and when they reach there, they can't define anything. Have enough rest. Do not read up to 5, like I have said. And then in the following day, you are in confusion. Do not choose the topics before the real exam. Some people, before they go to the examination, they want to say that for me, I am going to do differentiation. I am going to do index numbers. I am not going to do regression. But you cannot know how the exam comes out. Those may be the hardest topics. All topics can be hard and they can be easy, depending on the exam. Make sure you use the 15 minutes to read and interpret the questions. What to do in the examination room is what I want to share with you. I have always told the students this: have a short prayer before you start. It puts you psychologically in a mood of success. Write the preliminaries required by the exam rubric. If it is writing your number, whatever, you write it. Take 15 minutes reading the questions and making choices. Whether questions seem hard or easy, don't panic and be excited. Believe that you will have to pass. Start with the easiest number and attempt harder numbers when the anxiety has reduced and speed increased. Please, please keep time for every part of the question. Remember the 1.5 minutes per mark. Don't keep on crossing and repeating the same number. If you fail quickly and go. Don't cross and come back to it when you have, don't cross, come back to it when you have gone through what you can manage in the paper. Always read what is required before you read the scenario so that you can take note of the key issues as you read the scenario. When they say stop, please stop and stand up. After the exam, no postmortem, please. Lamenting about the past exam, just prepare for the next and you wait for the results. What to do after receiving results? If results come out well, thank God or Allah and advance to the next papers or level. If you don't get the 50%, multiply your marks by 0, begin again and double your efforts. Many students who miss pass mark by 1 or 2, imagine they need little effort to pass that paper when they repeat, and therefore want to come to revision at the revision time. This is a wrong assumption. You can only repeat a paper, but you cannot repeat the same exam. Excuse me. When you complete CPA, my dear friends, when you get the title CPA, you must meet the expectations of the clients. As a business doctor, like I said before, therefore do not read only to pass exams, but try to understand concepts properly, because the hardest exam is in the field, right from interviews to execution of your duties. And this time, if you don't perform, you may not be allowed to repeat. Dear friends, I would like to conclude. And in the conclusion, all that I have shared is a testimony of what helped me to pass the so-called hard papers on first sitting and highly. I am happy to note that as a trainer, my students who follow the same procedures have always passed QT, MDC, and other papers easily. Remember, successful people do not do different things, but they do the same things differently. Even the people who don't pass, they revise. People who don't pass, they go to class. But those ones who go to class and do it differently, revise and do it differently, are the ones that pass. I wish you success in your future exams. Thank you for listening to me, and may God bless you. I will wait for some questions, if there are people who have questions, so that we can have some interaction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CPA
You are most
Dennis
welcome.
Chiriamureva. It has been such a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
And I hope the students who took their time to participate have picked a note, and we hope for better results come December.
Thank you.
So we are going in for the questions and answer our questions. Q&A session. We have 2 so far. We have Amos, who is inquiring about whether it is allowed to write on the question paper. For instance, put question number on the formulas in the table. And then Shakira, who would like to attend your classes, she's asking where she can attend your classes from, whether you accommodate online students, and for your contact.
Okay.
This one is asking whether we shall share the presentation. Yes, the presentation will be shared. So for Amos, I have not really understood what he wants to write on the question paper. If he means in the first 15 minutes, but otherwise you don't need to write in the question paper a lot of things, because you're going to move out with a question paper. So if you write, the examiner will never know what you wanted to write, because you've not submitted the question paper. So I don't know what Dennis can tell Amos about that, but that is in my opinion, you don't have to write on the question paper.
I have a similar opinion. You don't have to write on the question paper, my dear friends. What you need to know is that everything that you have, you should leave it, as long as it is knowledge from you, with the examiner. Even if it is something you are scribbling, let it be on the question paper. You never know, the examiner can cast an eye. And you may write something on the question paper. If you fail to transfer it to the answer booklet, then it will not be seen. And surely it is not necessary. There is somebody who is talking about my contacts. Maybe I can read my telephone number. My telephone number is 0772 639 186. 0772 639 186 and 0704 88 72 72. 0704 88 72 72. If you call me, I can give you my email address. My 2 numbers are on WhatsApp. And as far as we don't have online classes, we had some online classes during COVID, but now we have physical classes, but we train in Barara at Uganda Matters Primary School on Saturday and Sunday. But we are planning to have, again, online classes. Maybe when you contact us, we shall give you the timetable later. Then the presentation will be shared automatically. I can get more questions.
We have Kore Basava, who is asking if someone can define a concept using an expression. Suppose you forget the definition, but you know the formula.
Aha, that is good, but I have told you, when you are in an exam, you may define a concept using the words, but you can also give examples, but the examples and whatever are additional. What I want students to understand is that any key concept will have something key that should not miss in the explanation or in the definition. That is what you must. You can forget and use your other own words, give examples, but at least for a particular concept, you must have a key word that should not miss. That is technical. I don't know whether that one is clear. My advice is, if you can't remember, even if you remember the formula, even if you remember an example related to the concept being asked, put it there. Even if it doesn't give you full marks, but at least that attempt can give you like a mark.
Thank you. Then we have Richard Mutebi, who is asking, are all formulas provided or some I have to know them off head?
Not all formulas are provided. Some of them you may know them off head, but they are few. What you need to understand is that the key formula for the particular concepts that will have been asked will be there. For example, I'm giving an example. If they ask about price index or quantity index, you will, if they ask about quantity indices, you will find formula for quantity indices in there. You may not find the formula for price index if price index has not been asked. The advice is that practice with all formulae so that you can have them at your fingertips. Then you will not even think about that list. It will help you. You will be knowing how to use the formulae and you get them. But there are just a few that may miss out. And the ones that miss out are not the very significant ones. It means they are not complicated.
We have a question from an anonymous attendee asking if there is any trick of drawing a network diagram.
Or the trick of drawing the network diagram is mastering the rules. That is the only trick. Mastering the rules, knowing that this one precedes this. This is how I put the time, the earliest start time, the latest start time, and doing practice. When you practice, you will have the rules in the head, and you know this one cannot follow this one. This is dangling. Here there is a dummy, and the rules are the key.
NASA is asking, how does section A really look like? It seems so abstract to us.
What?
Section A, but Nancy, quantitative techniques does not have sections. It's one paper, one section running from number 1 to number 6. So the section A that you're asking about, maybe you're confusing it with another paper.
If it is cost and management accounting, that's where there is section A. The quantitative techniques does not have a section A and B, and all questions have equal marks, 20 marks, and you choose 5 out of the 6.
Yeah. Then finally, we have Boaz, who is asking if formulas are given marks.
No. First of all, the formula are given to you. The examiner will only realize that you understand what you are doing when you start substituting in the formula. Because if the formula were given marks, they would not be provided. Use of the formula is what is given marks. If you substitute correctly, the quantities that are supposed to go in the formula, that's when they start giving you marks. But stating the formula, you will not get any mark because you will have just copied the formula from the back of the paper and put it in the what? In the answer booklet.
Then we have Richard Mutebi again, asking that questions with explain using illustrations. How best do you attempt them?
Questions what?
Questions that are asked, like using illustrations, explain kurtosis. How best do you attempt such a question?
I wish I could get an example, but if they say using illustrations, that means you can draw. For example, if you are talking about positive rescued, negative rescued, you are talking about normal distribution, you can draw the diagram and you show where the longest tail is, where the shortest tail is. That one can work. When you are illustrating, you can use the diagrams and you present it.
We have 2 people whose hands are up.
Yes, please.
I am going to allow Richard Kisa. Richard Kisa, please ask your question. Richard Kisa.
Can he write the question in the chat?
I don't know why he's not writing. So that one we can leave. There was another person.
Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes, are you getting me?
Yes, please. Yes, Richard. Hello?
Richard, your network is bad. I think you just type the question in the Q&A. Then we have Job, who's saying, thank you, sir, for the marvelous presentation.
You're welcome.
There is a question I was handling and discovered that the table wasn't given, and yet the question asked required a T table. Wondering whether some provisions are given for such scenarios. He's wondering whether some provisions are given for such scenarios.
The T table had not been given.
Yeah.
I'm not very sure of the question is referring to, but that could be just an error missing out the table.
Maybe I can say something about that.
Yes.
First of all, you might find Job wasn't so sure of the table that he was supposed to use. If it is in an exam, sometimes the student will put up the hand and be like, we are not given this. You look through that the paper, you see the table is there, but maybe the student doesn't know how the table looks like. Secondly, if it really happens that the table is not given, do the number the way it is supposed to flow, and where you're supposed to put the value of the value that was supposed to be obtained from the table, you can just leave that T, and when they are marking, that is considered. They will see that this person, Job, had the right steps, but it was unfortunate that the table had not been attached, so you couldn't get the value, but you'll be awarded your marks, even with your T value in the question. But most times, before the paper is done, we ensure that at least we try to put all the tables that we feel will be needed for that particular exam. But in case it happens, just follow through the working and you will get your marks.
Maybe I can add on. Hello?
Yes.
What I can add on is, you see now when we are discussing this one without seeing the question, when we are talking about T is a distribution, and some distributions are approximated to other distributions under certain conditions. So you may find that it was not supposed to use a T distribution, but maybe it was supposed to be approximated to a normal distribution or to another different distribution. And you find the tables that we are given, we are catering for now the approximated distribution. That is also possible.
Yeah, thank you. Then we have Koreb again. QT does a note with figures. Suppose you mistaken a number and maintain it throughout. Can you get some marks? Suppose, yeah, you mistake a number where you're supposed to put a 5, you put a 8 and you maintain your 8 throughout, can you get some marks?
In the marking, now that one goes to the marking. When they are marking, there are marks that are given. There is what we call the method mark, there is a bonus mark, there is an accuracy mark. So depending, you may substitute wrongly, but a wrong value, but correctly. So there the examiner may give you some mark. So it will depend on what is being done. But you see now, if it was supposed to be a bonus mark will require that there is actually the method is right and the answer is also right. So depending on the level of where that value comes in, you may or may not get the mark.
Benon is asking for that. Kits, yeah, the kits are there. We have Richard Mutebi again in terms of organization. How best am I required to present my answers? You're required to present your answers the best way possible.
Yes.
Yeah, that is, we have no any other alternative. Present them the best way possible and make sure
they
you
are
handwrite
neatly, you write very well, or they are neat, very organized. If it is a graph, which should take 3/4 of the graph paper, don't draw very tiny things. And when you are writing on the graph, when you put a mark, write in that mark exactly, don't write on top of it or below it. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sorry, we got a problem with the internet.
Yeah, I was seeing here some few questions.
Yes.
Where somebody is talking about plotting the graph and the extreme or whatever. I am requesting the students to understand that when you are plotting the graph, you follow the rules of the graph. Don't put there other possibilities of if I don't do this, I am requesting them to learn to do the exact required graph. You plot, you label from this axis and the other axis, and you use the scale. Then somebody is asking, there reaches a moment where you ask yourself why I'm doing CPA. Even after you have started, what if tomorrow you wake up and it's not even considered anymore? I want to advise the people who are doing CPA, they are not doing it for anybody. That you are not doing it for a job only. You are doing it for acquiring knowledge that can help you even if you go to private sector, even if you go anywhere. So don't think about that. If they don't want to consider CPA, then I should not do it. Please acquire that knowledge. I am very sure that it will help you in your lifestyle.
Thank you very much. People
You're
are asking if you're going to conduct any online revisions for CPA before December. Or I think you're in business. Kindly tell people if you can do revision for them.
Before December.
Yeah.
I have to plan for it.
Okay, the good thing he has shared his contacts, so in case of anything, you can get to him.
Yes.
I don't see any other questions.
Okay.
Or any hand that is up. I want to thank you very much, Dennis, for the presentation. It has been a wonderful.
You are most welcome, please.
And to the students, please go and practice what you've been told. Mathematics is not hard. You just have to practice. That is the only way you will get. If you cram, you cannot cram mathematics and pass it. So make sure you practice every other day and you will get it right. It is just one paper. So you clear it and move away. I always see people who are struggling with 50 and they finish level 2, they are still on 50. And you wonder how someone can pass advanced taxation and fail quantitative techniques of level 1. But it's all about practice. Make sure you do enough practice, get the right books, get the study kit, get all the material you need, the examiner's comments, and don't cram the solutions of September. They are not coming in December, but understand whatever you're reading and practice. I can surely assure you that you'll get it right. Thank you very much. I see Nancy saying thank you. This is an eye-opener to me. So I think we've come to the end of this. Thank you very much. We hope to see a positive impact in the forthcoming exams. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a nice evening.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.